day everyone, I'm Hiroyuki Madera from BSED 3C, and today we'll be presenting Structuralism, and I'll be discussing to you the definition, history, and proponents. Structuralism is a general theory of culture and methodology that implies the elements of human culture must be understood by the way of the relationship to a broader system. Structuralism is a form of textual analysis used by literary critics to interpret text, as well as a genre of discourse used by literary critics to share the results of their interpretive efforts. Structuralism is also a form of understanding and examining language, literature, and culture that focuses on opposing ideas or elements of structure and seeks to demonstrate how they contribute to the overall structure. According to the popular structuralist critic named Terence Hawkes, defines structuralism as a way of thinking about the environment that is primarily concerned with the interpretation of structures. Structuralism considers literature to be a science system in which meaning is built within a sense. To assess the meaning of terms inscribed with meaning, they can be compared to other words and structures. Structuralism enjoyed popularity in the 1950s and 1960s in both European and American literary theory and criticism. The meanings and relationships of science are determined by cultural cultures. A structuralist approach to criticism examines patterns, narrative operations, and/or codes of practice to interpret the text and the culture from which it arises, focusing on the underlying structures that enable meaning to be created. Charles Sanders Peirce was born on September 10, 1839 in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and died on April 19, 1914 in Milford, Pennsylvania. And he was considered the father of American pragmatism and a scholar of logic, language, communication, and the general theory of science known as semiotics. He is also an extremely prolific logician and the creator of an evolutionary, psychophysically monistic philosophical scheme. His writings span roughly 57 years, beginning about 1857 and ending near his death. His published works total approximately 12,000 printed pages, and his unpublished manuscripts total approximately 80,000 handwritten pages. He published on a wide variety of subjects, from mathematics and physical sciences to economics, psychology, and other social sciences. And here are some works of Charles Sanders Peirce: The Essential Peirce, published on 1992, and Peirce on Science. Ferdinand de Saussure, born in Geneva on November 26, 1857. He was the founding father of modern linguistics. He made his mark on the field with a book he published a month after his 21st birthday, in which he suggested a radical rethinking of the original pattern of vowels in Proto-Indo-European. As Ferdinand de Saussure set out to reform the philosophical and methodological foundations of linguistics, he was a young man with no academic degree. His first attempt was partially fruitful in terms of the historical study of Indo-European languages, but his larger goals would take far longer to realize. Only after his death did a book based on his general linguistics lectures set the agenda for language research in the 20th century and beyond. Here are some famous works of Ferdinand de Saussure: Memoir on the Primitive Vowel System in Indo-European Languages, published on 1879, and Course in General Linguistics, published on 1916. Claude Lévi-Strauss was born on November 28, 1908 in Brussels, Belgium, and he died on October 30, 2009 in Paris, France. He was a French social anthropologist and a leading proponent of structuralism, a concept used to describe the study of cultural structures in terms of the structural relationships between their constituent elements. Structuralism influenced not only on social science in the 20th century, but also in philosophy, comparative religion, literature, and film. Levi-Strauss' structuralism was an attempt to distill the vast amount of data regarding cultural institutions down to the basics or the formal relationships between their constituents. To interpret cultures, he built models based on structural linguistics, knowledge theory, and cybernetics. Here are some famous works of Claude Levi-Strauss: The Raw and the Cooked, published on 1964, and From Honey to Ashes, published on 1966. Roland Barthes, or also known as Roland Gerard Barthes, was born on November 12, 1915 in Cherbourg, France, and he died on March 25, 1980 in Paris, France. He was a French essayist and social and literary critic who helped develop structuralism and the new criticism as leading intellectual movements through his writings on semiotics, the systematic study of symbols and signs pioneered by Ferdinand de Saussure. He is one of the most influential structuralist theorists of the 20th century. He uses Saussure's definition of semiotics, which he defines as the science of how signs act within society. Barthes is particularly interested in the arbitrary nature of signs in communication structures such as text. Here are some famous works of Roland Barthes. Writing Degree 0, published on 1953. Mythologist, published on 1957. That concludes my discussion, and it will be further discussed by my partner, Raffy Aquino.
Good day everyone, my name is Raffy, and today we're going to learn more about structuralisms and as well as the different concepts. So Hiroyuki Madera already discussed the definition, the history, and as well as the proponents. So first, I'll be going to provide you here the key terms that we are going to encounter on this discussion. First is sign. So sign is the basic unit of sociological linguistics, a physical entity which consists of signifier, which is an acoustic image, and a signified or a mental concept. So sign is said to be an arbitrary because of a logical relationship between the signifier and signified does not necessarily exist. Semiotics or semiology, it is a study of signs, symbols, and signification. So it is a study of how meaning is created, not what it is. Next is referent. So referent is an extra-linguistic object which a sign refers to. So the relationship between signs and the referent is also arbitrary and conventional. Binary opposition. So binary opposition is a pair of terms or concepts that appear to be opposite in meaning. So we're trying to provide meaning to a word through their opposite. For example, light and darkness. So what is darkness? Darkness is when there is no light. That is binary opposition. Now let's move on to the principles of structuralism. According to Ferdinand de Saussure, which is the founding father of structuralism. So there are two governing principles of structuralism. So first, episteme. So episteme simply implies that a unit of knowledge is a construct of language. So which means in order for us to understand really structuralism, we need to learn the basic of language. Under the same principle, so it says that linguistic determinism is the key. So meaning language determines man's stuff or human's stuff. So what we think is related to our language or how we know language. For example, so a child may think of a word father. So the concept of a father was determined how a child know the qualities of being a father. So the child may think that he is a man, he is a loving person, and that is how the child know about the word father. The third theory is paradigmatic and syntagmatic access. On the lexical level, paradigmatic contrast indicates which words are likely to belong to the same word class. So let's take a look for this group of words. So cat, dog, and parrot belong to a specific group or figure of speech, which is noun. While this walk, run, and as well as slept, so this belongs to the group of or to the class of verbs. That is the example of the paradigmatic access. On the other hand, syntagmatic relations between words enable one to build up a picture of co-occurrence restrictions within syntax. For example, the verbs hit and kick need to be followed after the noun, which is paw. So here's the example sentence. Paul hit the wall. Or the verb, which is kick, follows the noun, which is paw. The last theory in the field of structuralism is the diachronic and the synchronic theory. So first, the synchronic perspective observes the language from a static point of view. It makes a temporary cut and determines what are the patterns that structure language at the moment accepted by the speech community. On the other hand, diachronic perspective examines the evolution of language through history. It is focused on how word signs are modified. New ones appears and other ones became old-fashioned. To conclude this topic, we have here the foundational questions of structuralist criticism. So this will be a guide on how we are going to critique a text or a writing with all the applied knowledge with regards to the theory of structuralism. First question in dealing with the text or a writing is what patterns in the text reveal its similarities to the other text. So in these questions, we are going to compare one work or a writing to another work based on its profound structure. Second, what binary oppositions or the opposite concept of a text? For example, light and dark, is it good or evil, old or young, masculine or feminine, and natural or artificial, and many more that operate in the text. Lastly, how is each part of the binary valued? Does the binary imply hierarchy? For example, given, is the light better than dark? Or is in an old age more valuable than the young ones? So this is structuralism, a powerful theory that deals not just with the content, but as well as the foundation and framework of a text that require an in-depth scaffolding and meticulously studied. Hope you learned something from us. See you on the next topic. Good day and God bless us all.